Hi, I'm DuEwa Frazier, and you're listening to episode 41 of Nerdacity podcast. Today, my guest is Cynthia Manick. She is the editor of The Future of Black, Afrofuturism, and Black Comics Poetry, published by Blair Publishing in 2021. Cynthia is also the editor of Soul Sister Revue, a poetry compilation published in 2019 by Jamii Publishing, and author of Blue Hallelujahs, published in 2016 by Black Lawrence Press. Cynthia has received fellowships from Cave Canem, Hedgebrook, MacDowell Colony, and Château de la Napoule, among others. Winner of the Lascaux Prize in collected poetry and a performer at literary festivals, libraries, universities, and museums. Her work has appeared in the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day series, Callaloo, Los Angeles Review of Books, The Wall Street Journal, and elsewhere. Cynthia currently serves on the board of the International Women's Writing Guild and the editorial board of Alice James Books. Cynthia is the founder and curator of Soul Sister Revue Poetry Reading Series. I hope you enjoy this episode. How you doing?
I'm doing good this Saturday. Thank you for asking.
Good. Well, thank you so much for joining me here on Nerdacity podcast. And what a treat, because we're still celebrating National Poetry Month around here.
Yes, it's April. The time for writing gets done.
That's right. So congratulations on your new anthology, The Future of Black, Afrofuturism, Black Comics, and Superhero Poetry, edited by yours truly, Cynthia Manick, who we have here, Lynn Lawson, and Gary Jackson.
Thank you so much. We love this anthology. We're so glad it's out in the world.
I mean, it is just, you've got all the heavy hitters in this anthology. I mean, you've got not only yourself, but Terrence Hayes, the late, great Lucille Clifton, the late, great Gil Scott-Heron, A. Van Jordan, Glynis Redmond, Tracy K. Smith, Terry Ellen Cross Davis, and so many more.
We were so surprised when we called, they answered.
Wow.
We were so surprised. We were like, oh, thank goodness. Thank you so much.
And let me answer, when you called, let me ask rather, when you called, was it during pandemic, pre-pandemic, or at the beginning of the pandemic?
We actually put this book together during the pandemic. So it was actually in February 2020, where we all started sitting around via Zoom, thinking about how we wanted to put the anthology together. So it became a call to action in terms of emailing the call out. We had a wish list of people we really wanted. I really wanted Lucille Clifton's poems in there because I loved her Superman series. It's a matter of getting permission from her estate.
Exactly.
Nikki Giovanni wanted to get her poem Ego Tripping in there.
Wow.
So it's a matter of actually just asking the right people and being patient. And then also finding poets who have those weird poems that don't really allow to play. You all have those B-side poems where, we love them. They're weird. We put them in, we try to publish them, but they don't really get published. But they mean the world to us. They prove that we're human, that we're nerds. So
I love it.
Poets have those kind of poems. It doesn't matter just finding and digging them out and putting them all in one place.
But isn't it great that you are such a community, organizer and curator that, hey, you know all the poets, right?
It's actually it's my power. My power is knowing people, sliding into their DMs.
There you go, sliding into the DMs.
I know you have. I saw you on Facebook.
Right, and this really is truly a case of, it's not what you know, but who you know.
Yeah, sometimes it could be. Yes. It's a combination of, because I think each editor brought something new to the table. Lynn had his knowledge of poetry and how Afrofuturism was working. Gary had his knowledge of comics. He is a comic book fanatic. He can tell you the names of issues, what's happening in those issues. And my background came from poetry and community building. So all three of us together, the trifecta sort of made this happen.
Wow. And so, on the back of the book, Cynthia, you state, in the future of Black, every poem and image illuminates. It subverts traditional canon with superheroes, anti-heroes, cultural commentary, reimagined backstories, and alternate worlds. This is just so powerful and so riveting. Were these words that you have here in quote, was this a part of your call for submissions or invitation?
I don't think so. I think these words are from my intro. Because when I was
Mm.
thinking about what inspired me to get involved in Afrofuturism, what inspired me to get involved in this project, and I realized that I remember Storm, Aurora Monroe of X-Men, and wanting to see a Black woman like her control the elements. And I wanted to
Mm.
have that imagination be normalized. I think as children, we ask questions all the time. Why is the sun following us? We imagine anything is about us. But as we get older, that sort of curiosity sort of is lost.
Yes.
Asking questions about the stars, what they're doing, we can't see them. That's sort of lost. And I want to bring that sort of back, that ability to question and imagine and reimagine.
I love that. And just the idea of speculative poetry, like while many of us know who Octavia Butler is and her groundbreaking work, and then you have, I want to say Nadia Corafor. Is that how you pronounce her name?
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
Okay. We have these beacons of speculative fiction and things like that, but speculative poetry, it's like, it's just has not been as widely heard of or paid attention to. And that's what I find partly so intriguing about this collection that you all have edited and put together for us.
I think as poets, we all speculate. We all question what if this happened, and what if that happened, and if this did happen, how we'll react, how we feel. And those kind of poems, they get published, but they get published very rarely. And they're not the hard hitters. I think now as we get older and as a society sort of embraces more of Afrofuturism, that imagination of poetry is coming back, is getting more popular.
True indeed. And I asked you, did this come about before or during or after this, the first leg of the pandemic? I'd also like to ask you, do you think the pandemic, with this sort of weird, presence and world society we've been living in the past few years, do you think it sparked more of the speculative, more of the imagination and the fantasy, almost as if, we have to create an alternative world, an alternative reality in order to make it through the real one?
Good question. I think the idea for this anthology came before the pandemic. But I also think that during the pandemic, when we were receiving poems through our call for submissions, we did see that shift. Because usually, everyone's hustling, right? We're hustling to get to the next event, to get this poem published, to get to work, to love our kids, to love our loved ones. And I think the pandemic has made us stop the hustle and embrace the thinking. And so people are thinking more and asking questions more about what if. So after this 9 to 5 that I'm doing at home, what's next for me? What's next for us? What's next for the universe? So I think the speculative questions came out of being silent, out of being still. Because usually as New Yorkers, we're never still. We're like boom, 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 boom. As Americans, we're never still.
True indeed.
So we work all the time. It was creatively or critically. We're always working. But having to be home and sort of stop the constant movement, that has made us think about the what if.
There you go. And so when we think about the what if, do you find that, the various questions that we've had, not only during the pandemic, but beforehand, that these works in the anthology answer those questions, whether it's related to, in some of the subject matter here, I mean, there's everything from Colin Kaepernick to The whole almost like the superhero with the Marvel. And then we have, Eartha Kitt reflects on Catwoman. And I mean, it's like going back in the past and then it's bringing us forward. It's movement in poetry. And I also love this section on Black women narratives. You have the quintessential, the icon of one of the icons of Black arts. You have Nikki Giovanni's Ego Tripping, which is one of my favorite pieces. It's so visual. It takes us back in time. It's so powerful. And then I love the overlay of the Black art, visual art, the illustrations, the graphic component of the book.
That really excited us. We were like, Blair Publishing said yes. I was like, oh, we can have artwork in color.
Yes, please. It makes me feel like, hey, this is a comic book. This is a graphic novel. This is a coffee table book, but in a new form, So can you please talk to me about that excitement of the visual aspect of the anthology?
Of course. I want to start by saying I think this anthology does a great job at imagining what could be. It looks back and then looks forward. You're right. It's circular in nature, just like life is. And I like how in these poems, we have people who are reimagining our futures, who are reimagining the ending of movies, or who are imagining what superheroes talk about. We have people who are imagining Black future, because there are Black folks in the future, despite the Jetsons and other sci-fi shows.
Sure.
We are there, and we will be there getting our hair done. We will be there building stuff. We will be there. We will be there. We will be here making discoveries just like we are now.
Dancing and rapping and also, politicking and jesting and all of that.
We will be in the future. We will be playing Janelle Monáe. We'll be playing Missy Elliott. We'll be playing all the Parliament Funkadelic. We'll be playing them too in the future. So I like how this book sort of embraces that idea of it's going to be a fact. We're going to be there. This is what it could be like. And talking about the visual art, well, I was thinking of, when we think about comic books, we think of these flashes of images. And while poetry isn't a flash of an image, it does try to capture a moment. So we wanted to try to have artwork in here that also captured a moment in time, a moment of reflection, a moment of action, a moment of a look, someone giving power, someone taking power, a moment of building. And so in all these, wonderful visual art, they actually serve as companion pieces to the poems indirectly, because you can see how people wrote down what they imagined, but now you can visually see it as well.
Wow, that's amazing. And, I have so many questions. Wow. So Cynthia, I know you from rather in terms of, those who are active on social media and active in arts organizing and things of that nature. You're a very well-known and wonderfully supportive poet curator of Soul Sister Revue. And talk to me about how your work as an editor and bringing poets together is very much in parallel to your work as a curator of poetry events.
That's a good question. I created Soul Sister Revue back in 2014. I remember I created it because I was going to readings and no one looked like me at the time. And they were either slam poets or they were MFA students. There was no in between. Or they were either all published poets or all emerging poets. There was no intermixing.
Right,
so
right.
I was gonna do it myself. I was like, I'm just gonna do it myself. And so I wanted to create. I was like,
do it my damn self.
I wanted to create
every Black woman.
Exactly.
At one point
I
or
wanted
another.
to create something where everyone can be with each other. I mean, if you publish 4 books and you publish 0, you're still poets. You're still having conversations about the written word, and you can be on the same stage together. So I wanted to do that. So when I think about curating, I'm always looking at, well, what are the poet writing about? What is their vibe? How do they connect to the audience? And are they telling a story? I'm a big fan of storytelling. It's definitely an African American tradition of oral storytelling, passing things down from daughter to daughter. So I think in storytelling and poetry, even in Lucy Clifton's small, tiny poems, she's telling you a story.
Oh, yes, she
She's
is.
making you invested in her and her experience and her perspective. So I want to have readers in my poetry series that do that. So I'm turning over to the anthology, I wanted the same sort of thing. I want to read poems that are world building, that are pulling me into your world. Each poem is creating its own little world and is doing that very, very well. So when we were all reading the poems for the anthology, we all gave them scores. I mean, we all have scores from 1 to 5. If a poem got a 4, it was automatically in. I mean, if you really love something, you would give a person to love it too, because each poem was giving something a person didn't see. So I think in terms of curating the collection, it was more about, well, what aspect of futurism or superheroes or comic books is this poem addressing? Also, what is it saying about the future, about the imagination? And also, what is it going to say in relation to the artwork? Is it building a world that we can inhabit? Can we see it? Can we feel it when we read it? So in terms of curating collections and curating, my reading series, they're very, very linked in terms of storytelling. Yeah.
Wonderful. And, I'd like to ask you, you mentioned, meeting the slam poets, and then there were emerging, and then there were those who were, certainly, you are a Cave Canem fellow, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and so the world that is written and published, and poets from MFA and poets from the academic, scholarly tradition, and then there are poets from, the Black arts tradition and all of that. So let me ask you, is there a conflict or even a competition between the written word versus the spoken word, the page versus the stage, in your observation and experience?
You know what? I think there used to be a direct competition, and now I think they complement each other more so than not. Because every poet can be a great poet, but not every poet can be a great reader of poetry.
Wow.
I've met many poets on the page are amazing, and I see them reading, and I'm just like, huh.
Right. It's like,
because
damn.
It didn't translate over. You know what I mean?
Right. I hear you.
Yeah, it didn't translate over. Whereas poets who are slam poets or spoken word poets, when it comes to the page, sometimes some words won't hit as much as they would spoken out loud.
In person, right.
Yeah, it's like, poems can be both. They can be stage ready and page ready.
Exactly.
They can be both. And so I don't think there's a direct competition anymore. I think now they complement each other. But in terms of publishing, I think page poets probably get published more because their work is easily accessible.
Yes.
But I think spoken word poets may have a bigger audience because their audience is more direct.
Because the spoken,
they're doing different things.
Yes, and they are bringing, and I've seen this myself, that they are able to reach an audience that is maybe not even particularly followers of poetry.
Yeah, because of delivery, because of their passion, because of the storytelling they're doing.
Right. Oh, that's a worthwhile perspective, and I appreciate you discussing that with me. And so, Cynthia, I'd love to ask you about what other genres do you write in, if any others besides poetry?
None.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I'll tell you why. Okay, I've tried writing. Actually, you know what? I can't say that. I'm thinking of trying microfiction. And I'm thinking of trying memoir. But I had tried regular fiction.
Super.
And I got exhausted. I was like, ugh, these characters, they're still alive.
I'm telling you, Cynthia, once they emerge, you cannot kill them off. They are going to push through you, or they're going to go on to the next poet.
Right. I may think about doing microfiction and memoir in the future. But right now, my focus has always been on poetry, and also maybe prose poetry as well. My poems lately have been longer and using the entire page. My poems now are sort of spreading wide-legged, as I would call it. So I think I'm moving more towards prose poetry than I used to. Yeah.
Because there's yet more that you have to do as a poet.
Exactly. Yeah.
There you go.
Exactly. Learning. you're never going to be done learning to be a poet.
Sure.
I mean, every time you sit down, you forget how to write a poem. And every time you sit down, you forget how you did it before. So yeah, you're
finding that point of continued growth is so it's sweet and it's so important.
It's so necessary. It really is. I mean, even the most famous poets still have something to learn because life is changing. The world is changing. The popular words of the day is changing. Last week it was starlings. Tomorrow's going to be crows. We don't know. So I mean, you know what I mean? We'll have to keep learning. And read other people's work. I mean, every person who's writing now, no one else sounds like them. They're going to come to the table with a different perspective, a different image, a different voice. And reading their voices will help you perfect your voice.
True indeed. I love that. And so, Cynthia, in terms of the pandemic, because this is one of my favorite questions, I get a wide range of responses from my author and poet guests. Was your creativity, your writing schedule, or just your motivation to curate or create or organize, was it impacted or affected in one way or another during the pandemic, apart from your anthology project?
Well, a couple of things. Well, physically, I was still luckily I still have a job. I was still working from my home. I was working continually later than usual, but I was working, and so I already had that to contend with because I'm also a project manager and I have people all over the country who I manage. So that was time consuming. In terms of curating, in terms of performing, I have to give props to our literary artistic community because we quickly transitioned from in person to online. Quickly, we rolled the punches and we knew voices need to be heard. And we went from Instagram Live to FB Live to Zoom to Teams to StreamYard. So we definitely was able to do that
to make that transition. Exactly. Yeah. And I love seeing, and even myself being a part of that virtual community building among poets and artists and curators. It was magnificent, as in, you know what? Poetry is going to live no matter what.
No matter what. So then it became a matter of, well, how do we bring that in-person energy to this online space? Is it making sure the chat is active? Is it being friendly? Is it asking them questions? Is it playing music? Is it drawing people out of their shells that way? So I think we managed to make the online presence of poetry active and alive because of hosts and curators who want to make people happy, who want to make it a conversation, like a speakeasy vibe every time they see you. So that's how I was able to do curating during the pandemic. Now, personal writing, oh no. For the first year, I didn't write a damn thing. I did not write anything. I think I'm a New Yorker, right? So we're so busy being successful at whatever. So
we're busy.
We're going to pandemic hard. We're going to yoga hard. We're going to do a Zoom hangout hard. We're going to do a Zoom happy hour hard. And then I think the summer came around and I was exhausted. I was like, I'm out. I was like, you know what?
That could be exhausting.
It was exhausting trying to be okay.
Yeah.
And people to be okay and arranging the Zoom calls with friends. And summer came around of 2020 and I was like, I'm really tired. My friend was like, I'm really tired.
Wait a minute, Cynthia. I have to ask you, I mean, it does not sound like you were on lockdown with everyone else. Were you on lockdown?
I was on lockdown, but I was doing things like literally my life was like online.
You were virtual
for everything. I was doing Zoom like happy hours. I was doing meetings for work. Then I had a Soul Sister Revue.
You had an active virtual social calendar.
I had an active virtual, and then people would text me, "Are you okay?" and reassuring them. And it was like to family members who hadn't seen me forever, and now they want to know me. I'm like, okay. It was like so the summer came around. I was exhausted.
You were very popular.
I was like, you know what? That summer, I was like, I'm going to hibernation mode. I'm just gonna.
I need a break. Yo, this virtual
I'm not doing happy hours anymore because this pandemic is not ending anytime soon.
I'm telling you, that virtual world can be more jumping than the real one.
It was conflicts Who's gonna do when? I had to like, this is getting crazy. And so I had to take a break. So I was like, okay, I'm going to hibernation mode. I'm only talking to people who I want to talk to. No offense. I was like, I'm going to text people I want to text.
Right.
I'm not doing happy hour unless you invite me. I'm not planning anything else. I had to start saying no and then really like sit down and sleep and take naps on purpose.
And take care of yourself.
Take naps on purpose. Like, it's 12 o'clock. Time for a nap.
Time for a nap.
And wake up at 1 and start working again.
Because you know what? Cynthia, life energy is life energy, whether you're in person or whether you're giving of yourself and your creative flow and intellect on virtual. It's still energy that you're expending.
Yeah. My face care. I have to be on camera. I have to toner. I have to do like mad stuff to be camera ready.
There you go, girl. I know I was doing those Instagram lives and whatnot myself.
My lighting okay? Lighting up or lighting low?
Yes, girl.
It was a whole thing. And so I wasn't writing. I think I started writing again the year 2 of the pandemic. That's when I really started getting back into writing and really getting in my groove back in terms of connecting myself.
Sure. So that's like 2021, right?
Yeah.
And then at that time, you had the anthology in the works already, right?
Yes, that time the anthology was in the works. It was we were getting the poems, we were getting the sections together. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And so, Cynthia, just going back to the anthology, what was it like as you put the call out, or perhaps, individual invitations? What was that like to really get a lot of the, award-winning notable poets, your peers, some, of course, you got permissions with Nikki Giovanni and Lucille Clifton and Gil Scott Heron. But what was it like gaining some of, the poet laureates like Tracy K. Smith, Frank X. Walker? What was it like being able to, kind of receive their work and give placement and space for their work?
It was so exciting. When we got the news that Nikki Giovanni said yes, I think we all did a dance in our chairs. We all danced, like we did a booty pop in our chairs. Like, yeah, she said yes. And so it was very, very exciting. And then see people who are currently poets and sending their work that we didn't know they had. It was like, you wrote a poem about Blade? Where was this poem this whole time? It's like, these poems, I think these poems have been buried in places, sprinkled throughout their own collections. And so now we get to have them all in one place.
Waiting for a worthy project in the platform. Yes.
Having them together. And so having that was amazing. It was amazing. And also, we also read books. We read Tracy K. Smith's Life on Mars. So Gary knew all the poems that he wanted. We just had read Yona Hari's last book. The poems I wanted on there was a matter of asking. So luckily, all 3 of us are well read. So some poems we were able to say we want that poem because X, Y, and Z.
Got you.
Another poem. I mean, for example, I did a reading. I think it was maybe 2020, 2021, right before the book was going to close. I think it was maybe September. And I did a reading with someone, and she read a poem about Wonder Woman. And I was like, I want that poem. And I literally had to email her that second because the book was closing in 2 days. So I was like,
"You are kidding!"
Yes, it was a poem. It was a poem about Wonder Woman. I can't remember the name of it, but the book was closing. I heard this poem today at an event. Here is what you guys think, and they loved it. We got it in. So it's also a matter of just listening. Sometimes you don't have to be the curator. You could go to the listen. I like to go to readings and listen, see what people are doing. And I heard that poem and I had to have it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. It's just a mixture.
And it sounds like it was just so much, serendipity, the way it all came together. And I'm so shocked that you started it, you said, in 2020.
Yeah.
It sounds like within a year it was tied up and then it was published in fall of 2021. That's amazing.
I think Lynn lost his original idea. I think he emailed Gary and myself. I want to say really early in 2020, maybe at the end of 2019, about his idea.
Okay.
I said, well, let me think about it. So I was like, do I have time? No. Do I want to do it? Yes. It's like, do I have time? I was like,
you know what? Who has time?
I know. It's like, who has time? But the fact there's going to be 3 of us. I was like, well, if it's going to be 3 of us, we could spread out the work between the 3 of us. So it won't be that much time.
Right.
So it was a matter, okay, we're all going to do it. Now it's a matter of doing a proposal and sending the proposal out to publishers, see if anyone wants to take a look at it, because we only had a sample size of things that we saw that we loved. Like, this is what we see right out there. This is how we want to package it. And luckily, Blair Publishing took a meeting with us. We had a great conversation all via Zoom, and they made an offer and they loved it. And from there, it was really just straight on through from there. So it's a matter of just basically coming together, organizing, have a proposal, and really being focused on what we wanted to do. So yeah, it was a very short time period, but I think because we were so focused on what we wanted and very clear, it was easier for them to say yes or no.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah.
And so did you find that, with putting an anthology together, was it similar to perhaps, organizing pieces under a theme or themes of your own work, and preparing an individual collection?
I always think that when I'm doing my own work, I'm always thinking that poems should talk to each other in a collection. So for the anthology, I sort of thought of poems talking to each other's sections instead of individual poems. Because as poems came in, themes started to emerge by itself. If you have Superman poems, okay, we use Superman section. We have anti-hero poems. We have poems about Killmonger from Black Panther. Oh, okay, we have poems about Blade. We have poems about reimagining the future. We have poems about Piggy and the Brain, pop culture.
Wow.
We have poems about Harlem. We have poems about, video game series. We have poems about the idea of how to pass. If you had a machine, if you could pass by pressing a machine, would you use it?
There you go.
Like, these poems, these sort of themes they emerged.
Right.
Out of the poems, as we're reading them, we're moving things around, and the poems themselves sort of started organizing themselves into these sort of buckets that we thought had to be in the book.
And let's add, poems about Sun Ra speaking to Gucci Mane.
Yes.
Poems about Emmett Till, poems that, imagine video games. And, there's so many, I just find, wow, the richness of this anthology. It's just, if this were fabric, it would be textured. It has smooth parts, and then it has rough parts, and then it has bumpy parts, and then it has rigids, and then you know what I mean. And it's like
it's
something
all part of a tapestry that we can
right. Totally.
Yeah.
And so, Cynthia, tell me about some of your the works that really jump out at you. I know that you really were excited about Nikki Giovanni's poem and Lucille Clifton. Tell me about some of the parts of this book that really excite you and really you feel really represent the collection very well.
I think Lucille Clifton's is my first go-to, because I think number one, she's already part of canon, but number two, people did not realize she wrote about Superman. People forget that all these poets, they're kind of Black nerds at heart. They're nerds. They've been Black nerds, always have been, but it's been hidden. So I think that those poems really got me interested in how we can conversate with comic book heroes about what they can do, what they can't do. Also, the idea of reimagining the endings of movies. I think Sada Astina did a poem about the ending of Slim and Slim and Queen, the movie.
Oh yes, the movie.
And
right?
I love the idea of that. I'm always thinking when I see these TV shows and I see a movie where another, Black couple is not going to make it. I was like, what if they do make it? What if they do make it?
Right.
We see so many stories of Black couples breaking up. What about the Black couples that stay together? We don't see those. So I love the reimagining there.
There you go.
Yeah. And lastly, the poem by Tim Siebels, Something Like We Did, after Sun Ra, that poem gets me every time because it sort of reimagines our past and our future. I mean, what if people like us were already here before and this came back?
There you go.
No, we don't know. What if though? What does that mean?
It's just infinite as to what you can imagine and what you can recreate, especially with your words and with this with imagination. And you mentioning Tim Siebels, there was a reading in his honor at AWP. Did you participate in that?
I was in the audience. Yes.
Wow,
Yes.
how was that? I
It
could
was
not make
so
that one.
good. I mean, you forget. I mean, I've always been a Tim Siebels fan, but you forget how the range of his work really, really goes. Like, there's one poem about a mosquito, and the mosquito has the mosquito has his voice, and he's like, how would you feel if you were with your lady, some man smacked you? I'm getting my grub on. And I'm like, oh my god, it's a mosquito. But like, you think about, that's him just thinking, imagining what the mosquito was thinking as he's trying to bite you. He's with his lady. He's trying to get his grub on. You rubbing his fluff.
Oh my!
I know. I was like, Tim Siebels. So it was really, really good to think about all the ways his work investigates the who and the what and the why of things. Yeah, I loved it. It was really, really good.
So here you're describing poet superheroes. Actually, if poets were superheroes, what would their superpowers be? And you just described one. I mean, we can go on and on, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so, Cynthia, I'd love for you to kind of, okay, before we get to the reading part, okay, there's more I want to ask you. I want to ask, did you and your co-editors imagine how this anthology could be utilized in either K-12 education classes or even college or MFA programs? Was there any talk or discussion on that?
Yes, we want them to get them in classrooms. We really want people to not only think about this book as canon, but also think about how they can write poetry, especially K-12 students, because they think poetry is out of their reach, but no. Superman, right? He had an origin story. What is your origin story? I want to hear yours. What are you good at? Are you good at folding sheets? That can be a superpower. We don't know. If it is, put it on the page. And also, we want you to imagine your future. So if they read this book and they see these origin stories, they can think about writing their own. Because the one thing I dislike is having stories not being told. And I think when people don't do poetry, that's what's happening. So I think K-12 is a perfect age to introduce them to telling their own stories and have it be valid and have it being seen by others.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that because, I'm often thinking of, when a new work comes out, whether it's, a young adult novel, a collection of poetry, particularly works by diverse poets and writers, how can this serve students? How can it serve underserved students who may not typically be afforded the option to study creative writing or study, diverse classes of the current poets, contemporary poets, the poets from the past, because their school systems don't offer those classes, or maybe where they go to college, the classes are not as diverse and that and so I often think about how does this fit into curriculum if someone were to develop a new course, an educator or someone who's an educator and a writer. How can this book work into that and maybe even be offered as an online course? Now we're thinking about digital humanities. And I find that this book is so perfect for the technological space and thinking about multimedia because of the visual aspect of the anthology.
And luckily we also include in the back of the book a syllabus that you can pull from in your own work, in your own teachings. And I think when we think about superheroes and letter S, Superman, we forget about the humanity behind the S. Because everyone wears their own S on their own chest. So you have to I want people to realize that they can bring their own S's out on the page. So that's a good way for K-12 students to think about themselves. Who do you save? How do you save yourself? How are you saving your mom? How are you saving, the dollar you made today? Think about that. You have to wear your own S all the time. You walk out the door. So celebrate that fact.
Wow, that's so important. And I really appreciate hearing that. And I hope that, with the publishing of this book, that it truly will reach, many educators who can reimagine education and open up students' minds to the literature that they have not been exposed to, quite frankly.
Yeah, TV, right? They're always watching Marvel. There's a poem in here about when Thanos does a snap. There's a poem in there about that. So these poems that are relatable. These are relatable poems that they can actually dive into and imagine and react to. Have them write their own ending to a movie.
Wow.
Why not? There's limits to your imagination. Why can't they?
That's a great idea.
We'll remake Romeo and Juliet. I forget them. Let's make something else. They've been dead a long time already. Let's make something else now. Yeah.
Right. I love it, man. This is just fantastic. And so, Cynthia, I'd love for you to share, 2 or 3 of the works in the anthology with us, either self-written or any of the other poems that you find very intriguing for us.
I'm going to read a poem by Tim Siebels, and I'm going to read the Lucille Clifton's Suite and end on my own poem. How about that? So it's like 3 poems, really.
Beautiful. And can I get the page numbers, because I want to follow along with you?
Page 214. This poem is called Something Like We Did by Tim Siebels. Something Like We Did, epigraph reads, Space is the Place by Sun Ra. You could tell they were surprised that we still tried to build cities, the way you and I might be amazed that birds can build nests without hands. They saw how we lived and made us sound like rain sifting a river or fire in heavy brush. For a lot of us, knowing we were not alone brought relief from the headache that had lasted all our lives. Some people were scared the religious held on to their books, claiming this was all make-believe, even when it was undeniable. The 61 ships, stacking light in the clouds, emerald green at dawn, lavender in late afternoon. The engines, so quiet it was like the sky was breathing. They walked something like we did, but the right foot stepped twice for each step of the left, so it appeared they were either testing the ground or considering a dance. Their skin was dark, but transparent, their hearts like ours but visible, and when the military began to mobilize, all of our big weapons turned to water, and whatever we tried with knives or guns, we somehow ended up doing to ourselves, until it seemed insane, even to us. Each time one of them spoke, it was like a piano if Cecil Taylor were playing, voices changing shape in the air, the way chimney swifts swoop, half turn, sling back. But sometimes, when they stared at us, their lips shimmered and something long ago lit their eyes, as if we were a memory of who they once had been. So they came back to Earth to prove their existence and mark the promise of another world, someplace we might actually go. We could see inside ourselves and trace what was there.
Wow, that's so beautiful.
So I'm going to read 2 of Lucille Clifton's poems. The first will be If I Should on page 3.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
If I should enter the house and speak with my own voice at last about its awful furniture, pulling apart the covering over the dusty bodies, the randy father, the husband holding ice in his hand like a blessing, the mother bleeding into herself, and the small imploding girl. I say, if I should walk into that web, who will come flying after me, leaping tall buildings? You?
Wow.
I'm going to read page 6. Note past the Superman. Sweet Jesus, Superman, if I had seen you dressed in your blue suit, I would have known you. Maybe that choir boy Clark can stand around listening to stories, but not you, not with Metropolis to save and every crook in town filthy with kryptonite. Lord, man of steel, I understand the cape, the leggings, the whole ball of wax. You can trust me. There is no planet stranger than the one I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
And the last poem by Lucille, I'll do page 5. Final note to Clark. They had it wrong, the old comics. You are only Clark Kent after all, oh, mild-mannered mister. Why did I think you could fix it? How you must have wondered to see me taking chances, dancing on the edge of words, pointing out the bad guys, dreaming your X-ray vision could see the beauty in me. What did I expect? What did I hope for? We are who we are, two faithful readers, not Wonder Woman and not Superman.
Wow.
I'm going to end on my own poem on page 11 called Dear Superman. I wrote it because I was thinking of who does Clark doesn't save? Girls with glasses. Ever seen him save girl with glasses? I have not. I have not. Dear Superman, tell yourself what you will. That you wait patiently to tip your Clark hat and jaw to every Sarah, Lois, or bright-haired Jane. Women with coiffed hair, pink lips, and cosmetics lightly placed. Delicate shades that blush so nicely on paper, TV, and high-resolution film. But I see how the animal of your body passes by the dark girls. Girls with names like Esther, Jaleesa, or Cantina Rose. Girls who wear glasses and dresses with the slip showing. Women of strong flavors, hot peppers between their legs and the storm inside. Those girls secretly stir you from liver to toenail. And they too crave strong arms, a cape, torpedo inside, and have dreams of sleeping between stars.
Wow. Love that. Mm. Wow. It's just so much in these poems. I mean, this is literally a whole writing program in this book. I you should have seen me. Like I'm looking at the words and listening. I'm like, wow. Yeah, this is like a BFA program in the anthology.
I'm glad. We're glad. We really are. We want this book to last a while and want it to be in the shelves of people's homes, of kids, of students who want to know how to write.
Truly, truly indeed. And so, Cynthia, please, tell me about, anything that you're excited about that's on the horizon, something that you might, whether it pertains to the anthology or anything else that you're doing.
Well, myself and Lynn Lawson will be in Chicago at the American Writers Festival on May 15th. But I'll also be at Bryant Park in July. And so we're excited about those two things.
Oh, that's awesome. And so your social calendar is filling up.
My social calendar.
your literary calendar,
Yeah, my literary calendar is ongoing. Yeah.
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 And so when is your next Soul Sister Revue?
So likely will be in June. We're returning, I believe, 9 years old soon.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's gonna be in June sometime. But I haven't picked a date yet. But yes,
Awesome.
we'll be in sometime in June.
Oh, that's amazing. And kudos for being a long-running poetry series, especially
Who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk
yeah,
it?
it's
9
like,
years later. Yeah.
Exactly. That's an amazing feat, though, really, especially during these times.
Mm-hmm.
It just speaks to the commitment that you have to the work, to the community, and just to contributing to arts and culture as a whole.
See the world change in any way. I think it starts with words. With language.
There you go.
That's what it starts with, language. Yeah.
And so, Cynthia, please tell us, where can we best follow you and find out all about your magnificent goings on and also how we can purchase and support the book moving forward.
You can find me on Twitter at Manick, Cmanick. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram at Brooklyn Cynthia. And the book can be purchased anywhere books are sold, including Blair Publishing's website, Amazon, and your local bookstores.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, Cynthia, I just want to thank you so much for joining me once again on Nerdacity. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, and I wish you continued success with your anthology and everything else that you're doing.
Thanks. This was fantastic. Thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate it.
And you were just listening to episode 41 here at Nerdacity Podcast with your host, DuEwa Frazier, and my wonderful guest, Cynthia Manick, discuss her new anthology, The Future of Black. You definitely got to get a copy of it, especially if you're a poetry lover or you're an educator. It would be a great add to your library or your classroom. Visit Cynthia's website at cynthiamanick.com or visit her publisher's site at blairpub.com. Follow Nerdacity on Instagram at Nerdacity Podcast. Tweet me and follow on Twitter at NerdacityPod1. We're also tweeting about current shows, culture, in addition to promoting our podcasts. Also visit us on Facebook and like and follow our Facebook page, which is Nerdacity Podcast with DuEwa. Stay tuned for future wonderful guests in the literary and arts world. And I hope you'll visit my website at duewaworld.com. If you're so inclined to support future episodes, come on and send a donation to paypal.me/DuEwaWorld or even Cash App DuEwaWorld. Thanks so much for listening. Take care.